Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're taking a close look at a book that's, well, it's been around for decades, influenced millions, and honestly, it still feels incredibly relevant.
hmm
We're diving deep into the core ideas of the magic of thinking big.
That's right. David J. Schwartz's classic, first published way back in 1959. And it's not just theory, is it? It's really presented as a set of very practical tools for change.
Yeah.
I mean, over 6 million readers. That's
Yeah.
saying something. Our goal here, I think, is to really pull out the most potent, the actionable insights. How to challenge disbelief,
Right.
how to cultivate genuinely positive thoughts, plan effectively, maybe unlock some creative energy, and really seize the power of the moment.
And right from the start, the main idea is almost, well, disarmingly simple. Schwartz argues success isn't primarily about your raw intelligence or, as he puts it, the size of one's brain.
No, it's something else.
Something else entirely.
It's about the scale of your ambition, isn't it?
Hmm.
Your perspective. He calls it the size of one's thinking. There's this great little story in the book about a company vice president looking at his team. They all had pretty similar backgrounds, education, health. Everything looked the same on paper.
Okay.
But one guy, Harry, was just achieving way more. And the VP's conclusion, Harry thought 5 times bigger.
Wow, 5 times. That really cuts right to it, doesn't it?
It does.
It hammers home that you are, in large part, a product of your own thoughts. So the call to action is basically believe big.
Believe big, yeah. And deliberately adjust your internal thermostat forward, push it higher.
Push it higher.
But, believing big means facing down what holds us back. And Schwartz identifies this really pervasive obstacle, this disease of the failures, which he actually calls excusitis.
Excusitis. I like that term. It's that habit, right, of manufacturing alibis, those ready-made explanations for why we're not making progress.
Exactly. Why we can't do something.
Yeah.
And the pattern is, well, it's kind of insidious. You're not doing so well. Maybe you subconsciously look for a reason, oh, it's my health, or I don't have the education, I'm too old, just bad luck. You grab onto one, you repeat it to yourself, maybe to others,
Right.
and eventually you actually start to believe it's the real, unchangeable reason you're stuck.
So the million-dollar question, how do you inoculate yourself? What's the vaccine for this excusitis?
Well, Schwartz is pretty blunt about it. He says you have to actively refuse to use excuses. Just stop.
Just stop.
You have to identify your own personal collection of alibis, the ones you lean on, and consciously fight them. He breaks down the most common types.
Like a health excusitis. You see that one everywhere, don't you?
Oh, definitely. The book contrasts, the person totally consumed by worry over every little ache and pain,
Yeah.
basically defeating themselves before they start. Contrasting that with someone who's maybe recovering from major surgery, but is just full of optimism, eager to get back to things.
That's a powerful contrast.
And the author shares his own experience here being diabetic. He was warned, apparently, that the biggest damage wouldn't actually be the physical condition, but the negative attitude towards it. He talks about seeing mild cases where people were just crippled by fear versus severe cases where someone just treated it like an inconvenience, like having to shave every day.
Wow.
And they just focus on work and life and having fun.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So what are the practical steps Schwartz gives then to kick this health excusitis?
He gives 4 main ones. First, and this might sound a bit surprising, refuse to talk about your health problems all the time.
Really? Don't talk about it.
Yeah, he says talking about ailments is like putting fertilizer on weeds. It just makes them grow bigger in your mind, and frankly, it bores other people.
Okay, fair point. What's second?
Second, refuse to worry excessively about your health. He even mentions Dr. Walter Alvarez from the Mayo Clinic, who apparently advised worriers that often the problem wasn't the tests they needed, but the underlying anxiety driving the need for constant checks.
Right, the worry itself becomes the issue.
Exactly. Third, consciously, genuinely be grateful for the health you do have, whatever level it's at. Focus on the positive.
Gratitude. Good one.
And fourth, just remember that core principle. Where there is a will, there is a way. Schwartz really argues that managing your health is far more controllable than most people think.
That first step is powerful, though. Starve the problem of attention. Okay, let's shift gears. Another big one, lack of education excusitis. Is not having the right degree, the formal schooling, is that a real insurmountable barrier?
The book makes a really strong case against this, maybe even a controversial one for some.
Okay.
While, yeah, education is good, obviously, it points out that tons of highly successful people aren't college graduates.
Sure.
Schwartz argues that in many fields, even science, he cites the physicist Edward Teller. It's not raw intelligence or memory that's most critical. It's interest, passion. Yeah. He suggests, an optimistic person with maybe an average IQ, say 100, can achieve vastly more than a negative person with a high IQ, like 120.
That's quite a claim.
It is. But he argues the real power is what he calls stickability.
Stickability.
Just having enough common sense and determination to stick with something until it's done.
Yeah.
He reckons that accounts for like 95% of ability.
95%. Wow. You think of that story he tells about Chuck, right? The honors graduate who knew everything about why businesses fail.
Yeah.
So he never actually started one himself. Meanwhile, his, quote, less bright high school friends went out and built successful companies.
Absolutely. Or the other example, the genius, the Phi Beta Kappa guy, who used all his brain power to prove why things won't work.
Right, using intelligence to justify an action.
Exactly. Or the PhD who ended up driving a truck in the Army for 3 years just because of his negative, defeated attitude. It wasn't lack of smarts.
So it's less about the engine size, the raw IQ points,
Right.
and more about how you're steering the car, how you direct that intelligence.
Precisely. Look at Phil in the book, the research manager, earning way more than his technically qualified subordinates like $30K when they made $10, which is big money then.
Okay. And he didn't have the degree.
No technical background, no college degree. His secret, he was a human engineer, just 100% positive, enthusiastic, really understood people. Schwartz argues Phil's success came not from the size of his brain, but from how he managed it.
Okay, so how does Schwartz tell us to apply that? What are the action steps?
3 key things. First, never underestimate your own intelligence and stop overestimating everyone else's. Really, don't sell yourself short.
Okay, good advice.
Second, consciously remind yourself every single day. My attitudes are more important than my intelligence. Actively practice positive, I'm winning attitudes. Use your brain power to find ways to win, not to list all the reasons you'll probably lose.
Use it constructively.
Yes. And third, recognize that thinking ability, like generating new ideas, problem solving, is often way more valuable than just memorizing facts. Train your mind to create, to innovate. Ask yourself, am I using my mind to make history or just to record what others have done?
Make history versus record history. That's a fantastic distinction. Okay, let's tackle age excusitis. The classic, I'm too old for this, or sometimes, I'm too young, nobody will take me seriously.
Oh, yeah. And the media doesn't help, does it? Constantly focusing on youth or telling people they're over the hill at 40 or 50.
Right.
Schwartz tells the story of Cecil, I think he was 40, and he genuinely felt too old to start a new career path as a manufacturer's rep.
Felt washed up already?
Yeah. And the core of overcoming this, Schwartz says, is simply recognizing that age itself isn't the actual limitation. Your birth certificate doesn't dictate your capability.
So if age isn't the limit, what should you focus on instead? Where do you put your attention?
Focus intensely on your present capacity. Ask yourself, how capable am I right now? What can I do today? And equally, focus on your future potential. What can I achieve? How well could I do going forward? Don't let the calendar tell you you're finished.
Focus on now and what's possible next.
Okay. And the last of the big 4 excuses. Look, excusitis.
Ah, yes. The perennial favorite.
Blaming everything, good or bad, on just my luck. Oh, he got lucky. Or I just have bad luck.
Schwartz is really clear here.
Yeah.
You just have to ditch the whole concept of luck.
Right.
Like, completely. Accept the law of cause and effect.
Cause and effect, okay.
He argues, pretty convincingly, I think, that if you look closely at so-called good luck, you'll almost always find it was preceded by serious preparation, planning, and crucially, thinking big.
Right, the groundwork was laid.
Exactly. And conversely, bad luck usually has very specific, identifiable reasons if you bother to look. The key difference he highlights is that Mr. Success learns from the setback, digs into the why, while Mr. Mediocre just shrugs and blames luck and learns nothing. So how do you beat that tendency? How do you conquer luck excusitis?
2 main ways, according to Schwartz. 1, consciously accept that things happen for reasons cause and effect. Stop attributing outcomes to random chance.
Okay, own the cause.
Yeah. And 2, and this is really critical, research your setbacks. Instead of just saying bad luck, dig into it. Why did that sale fall through? Why did that project fail? Find the specific reasons and use that knowledge so it doesn't happen again.
It really seems like all these excuses, health, education, age, luck, They all boil down to a fundamental lack of self-belief, don't they?
That's a huge part of it, yeah.
So how does Schwartz suggest you build that kind of, rock-solid confidence you need to actually think big in the first place?
This is where he brings in a really practical, actionable idea. You have to actively sell yourself to yourself.
Sell yourself to yourself. Explain that.
He observes that so many people are kind of half alive because they lack genuine self-respect. They don't truly believe in their own capabilities, their most important product themselves.
I love that anecdote he uses about the vacuum cleaner salesman. The guy would literally give himself a pep talk before every single call, reminding himself he was the best, he was going to make the sale. It's about getting your internal state right first. To be on top, you have to feel like you're on top.
Exactly right. Or remember the trainee who gave that awful first public talk? Just froze up completely. But then, after just like 60 seconds of really forceful, positive self-talk in private, he went back out and delivered a brilliant second one. The book really emphasizes the power of deliberate, uplifting self-praise, not that destructive habit of constantly putting yourself down.
And there's a really concrete technique mentioned for this too, isn't there? Something practical you can do.
Yes, absolutely. Tom Staley's 60-second commercial. He basically wrote out this personalized statement, like a short ad for himself, highlighting his strengths, his goals, his positive qualities.
Okay.
Carried it in his wallet, and reviewed it multiple times every single day. It's a very practical, repeatable way to just keep reselling yourself on your own value.
Selling yourself to yourself. That feels like such a crucial foundation.
Okay, so beyond confidence, what about nurturing creative thinking? Schwartz insists this isn't just for artists or scientists.
Not at all. He argues creative thinking is simply about finding new, better ways to do anything. Any task, any job, any situation. It's a skill you can actually develop.
The thought experiment he uses about eliminating jails is such a great illustration.
Isn't it?
Your first reaction is probably, that's insane, impossible, chaos. You immediately list all the reasons it can't work.
Right, the can't be done list.
But if you force yourself to flip the question, to challenge that assumption and ask, okay, let's pretend we could eliminate jails. How would we manage society then?
Suddenly your mind has to start generating creative solutions.
Exactly. You start thinking about addressing root causes, poverty, education, maybe investing heavily in youth centers, new types of rehabilitation, focusing on prevention. The ideas start flowing once you believe the solution is possible.
Believing it's possible unlocks the how. Like the student in the book who thought returning to school was impossible.
Yeah.
Until he fully committed to the belief that he must return, and then the how started to emerge.
Right. And Schwartz also highlights that successful merchant who had a weekly improvement program, she didn't just sit around wishing for more customers.
Passive wishing.
No. She actively asked herself every week, what new things can I do this week to attract more customers? Or, how can I improve my merchandise display? Action-oriented questions.
Shifting from wishing to asking how.
And this ties into his idea about capacity, too. Schwartz argues your capacity, how much you can handle, how much you can do, isn't some fixed limit. It's often more a state of mind.
A state of mind. How so?
When you truly internalize the belief that you must find the time or the energy for something important, your efficiency and creativity just seem to expand to meet the need. Like that accident victim in the book who suddenly found the capacity for both work and household duties because she absolutely had to.
Right. The necessity drove the capacity.
Exactly. So the book's advice is to constantly ask yourself, how can I do more? Not in a frantic way, but in a creative, solution-finding way. And trust that the answers will come. He even quotes that old saying, right? If you want it done, give it to a busy person.
Huh. Because they've already figured out how to manage capacity. It loops back to using your mind to create ideas, not just store facts.
Precisely. And that creative capacity, your overall thinking size, is profoundly shaped by what Schwartz calls your mind food, your environment.
Mind food? Okay, not literal food, obviously.
Oh, no. It's everything that influences your thoughts daily. The people you associate with, the media you consume, the conversations you have, your whole psychological environment. He argues it determines so much your habits, attitudes, your personality.
So who you are today is largely a result of your past environment. And who you will be tomorrow depends almost entirely on the environment you choose or create for yourself going forward.
He's particularly strong on the impact of people. It's almost like osmosis. You spend enough time with negative, small-thinking people, and inevitably your own thoughts start to shrink.
Yeah, it rubs off.
It really does. But conversely, if you associate closely with ambitious, progressive people, Their drive and optimism start to fuel yours.
The book describes 3 different ways people react to that environmental pressure, particularly the pressure towards mediocrity.
Right. You've got the first group, those who just surrender completely. They find ways to rationalize mediocrity, make it seem okay, even desirable sometimes.
Group 1.
Group 2, those who surrender partially. They want more, maybe, but they're held back by fear of what others think, fear of failing, fear of standing out from the crowd.
Who's stuck in the middle group.
Sort of.
Yeah.
And then group 3, those who simply never surrender. They live and breathe progress, ambition, success. And Schwartz says these are generally the happiest people because they're accomplishing the most.
You think back to that story of WW early in the book. Remember him? The friend with that really cynical formula for success.
Oh yeah, marry rich, steal, or know the right people, something like that.
Right. He was obviously intelligent, but years later, he was still stuck in a low-paying draftsman job, just mired in that negative, cynical environment he surrounded himself with.
It's such a potent warning. Schwartz calls out these negators, and also those well-meaning but ultimately unhelpful freelance advisors who are always ready with a dozen reasons why your new idea can't work or shouldn't be tried.
Yeah, the dream killers.
Pretty much. And their negativity often just reflects their own lack of achievement. The key takeaway is, don't let them drag you down to their level. Actively seek out and cling to positive, progressive people.
Makes sense.
And he's also really wary of gossip. Calls it thought poison. Says it literally pollutes your mind and shrinks the size of your thinking.
Thought poison. Wow. So how do you actively manage this? How do you curate your mind food, your environment?
He gives some concrete steps. First, deliberately make an effort to circulate in new, different groups of people. Get exposed to different perspectives.
Broaden your horizons.
Exactly. Second, actively make new friends. Join organizations. Consciously enlarge your social and intellectual circle. Third, be incredibly careful about whose advice you actually take. Seek out progressive, successful, forward-thinking sources, not the armchair critics.
Be selective. Okay. Now, beyond environment, thinking big absolutely requires direction,
Right.
purpose. The book puts huge emphasis on setting clear goals.
Immense stress on it. You absolutely must, he insists, form a clear, vivid image now of the person you want to be in the future. Maybe it's 10 years out, maybe 5, but have that picture. Without a destination, you're just, drifting, lost in the shuffle.
He gives that example of FB, the young guy fresh out of college who, when asked what job he wanted, literally had no idea, just anything.
Right. Compared to the other trainee who had this detailed 10-year plan, mapped out work goals, home goals, community involvement goals. He knew where he was heading.
That plan provides the roadmap, the direction.
Exactly. Lacking a clear goal leaves you scattered, easily confused, inconsistent. You just flounder on what Schwartz calls the ruddy road to mediocrity.
Ruddy road to mediocrity.
Yeah.
Ouch.
He argues that truly successful people are totally devoted to their main objective. Their whole life becomes integrated around that purpose. You have to kind of surrender to that goal, let it guide your decisions.
And there's a practical power, too, isn't there? Just the act of setting goals.
Absolutely. Goals get things done. Think about business production targets, sales quotas, project deadlines. They create focus and drive action.
Schwartz even touches on something really fascinating, how having strong goals can actually impact your longevity.
Yes. He gives examples like Lou Gordon, the guy who stayed active and, young in spirit, well into retirement because he kept pursuing new goals, new projects.
Kept him vital.
Exactly. Or Mrs. D, the woman whose intense desire to see her son graduate, apparently gave her the will, the life force, to live 20 years longer than expected. A strong desire to accomplish something is presented as this incredibly powerful force for living longer and better.
It feels like progress, then, is made one deliberate step at a time, guided by that big picture goal. Big achievements are really just a series of smaller ones strung together.
Perfectly put. And here's a really crucial insight, very practical. Prepare for detours. Expect them.
Prepare for detours.
Yeah. Think about it. If you're driving to a destination and you hit a roadblock, a road closed sign, what do? You don't just park there and give up, right?
No, you find another route, a detour.
Exactly. Setbacks aren't necessarily defeat. They're often just temporary reroutes on the path to your goal. He compares it to military leaders who are constantly adjusting their plans based on what's happening on the battlefield. Flexibility is key.
Because achieving anything really worthwhile inevitably involves hitting those roadblocks, facing hardships and setbacks.
Absolutely. It's part of the journey.
So how do big thinkers, according to Schwartz, react when they hit those bumps? How do they process setbacks differently?
They don't see them as proof that they're failures. or that the goal is impossible. They treat the setback as a lesson, a valuable piece of feedback.
A lesson? How?
You have to research it. Like, he uses the analogy of the CAA investigating plane crashes. They don't just say, oh, well, bad luck. They meticulously investigate to find the exact cause.
Right, find the root cause.
Yes. So you research your setback. Why did it happen? What went wrong? Learn from it so you don't make the same mistake twice. Use it to propel yourself forward, actually.
The examples he gives are really powerful. The graduating senior who failed that crucial class.
Yeah.
Instead of giving up, he saw it as a chance to really master the material, retook the course, and got his degree. Or Mr. Williams, blinded in the war,
Amazing story.
who insisted his blindness became an asset in his ministry work because it forced him to connect with people on a deeper level without judging by appearances. Or even politicians who learn more from losing elections than winning them sometimes.
And the opera singer, Miss Stevens. Remember her? She bombed an audition and her teacher bluntly told her, have the courage to face your faults.
Oof, tough love.
Right. But instead of crumbling, she used that to analyze her weaknesses, worked on them, and achieved major success later. It's all about reframing mistakes, not as endpoints, but as data points, stepping stones.
So the message is, actively reject blaming bad luck. Reject seeing mistakes as proof you're inadequate. View them as opportunities to come back stronger, to become a bigger winner next time.
Exactly. Schwartz says a failure isn't someone who makes a mistake. A failure is someone who makes a mistake and doesn't cash in on the experience, doesn't learn from it.
Right. Stop blaming luck. It just keeps you stuck, keeps you from growing. Research the setback instead. Get curious about it.
That's the key. Curiosity over blame.
Okay. Another really vital principle for achieving big things, especially things that involve other people, is what the book calls the power of being human, of genuinely liking people.
Absolutely essential. Success rarely happens in a vacuum, right?
Sure.
You almost always need the cooperation, the support, the buy-in of other people.
True.
And to get others on your team, to get them to help you willingly, you can't just order them around. You have to make them want to do things.
Okay, and how do you do that? How do you get people to want to help or cooperate?
By thinking, genuinely thinking about their interest, you have to try and see the world through their eyes. Schwartz uses that great little rhyme. To sell John Brown what John Brown buys, you've got to see things through John Brown's eyes.
I like that. See through their eyes.
Yeah. He gives the example of a successful shoe commercial that was crafted to appeal to what parents wanted, durability, value, and what kids wanted, style, coolness. It addressed both perspectives.
As opposed to...
As opposed to a failed ad campaign for, I think it was electrical fuses, that totally ignored what the actual customer cared about and focused only on technical specs nobody understood or valued. Didn't see through John Brown's eyes.
Got it. So empathy, basically. Understanding the other person's perspective. And this ties into his Be Human rule.
Directly. The Be Human rule is about showing respect, genuinely caring, going the extra mile for people. Showing you see them as people, not just cogs in a machine.
And the book suggests this isn't just nice, it's actually highly effective.
Massively effective. It pays huge dividends in loyalty, trust, and cooperation. Think of that executive, John S., in the book. He didn't just help an employee find housing out of the goodness of his heart. Well, maybe he did. But he also handled a necessary dismissal with incredible care.
How so?
Instead of just delivering the bad news, he actively helped the person find a new, suitable job. He treated a person with dignity, even in a difficult situation. The book emphasizes that showing genuine interest in people, treating them well, always pays off.
So what are some concrete ways to practice this Be Human rule day to day?
Schwartz offers a few, like actively try to add value to people, visualize their best qualities, help them see their potential. Let your actions consistently show you put people first. That means showing interest in their lives beyond just work tasks, treating everyone, regardless of status, with respect.
Little things can make a big difference.
Huge difference. And another one, make a point of praising your subordinate's good work to your own supervisor. Share the credit. Build people up.
Okay, so all these principles, thinking big, conquering excuses, building confidence, creativity, managing environment, goals, learning from setbacks, valuing people, they all seem to build towards developing a leader's mindset. And Schwartz has a specific take on what defines a leader, right?
He does. He says the single most defining characteristic of leaders is that they think progress. They're constantly asking, how can we do this better?
Not just maintain, but improve.
Exactly. He contrasts the typical status quo salesman who says, everything's fine, boss, no problems, with the progressive salesman who comes in brimming with ideas. Here's how we could improve customer service. Here's a potential new market. Here's how we could be more efficient.
And guess who gets the promotion?
You got it. The one sinking progress. So to be a leader, you have to embrace that belief in constant improvement, always looking for expansion, greater efficiency, new and better ways of doing things. Push for progress.
And Schwartz makes another really interesting point about the ripple effect of leadership, doesn't he?
Yeah, it's quite profound. He says subordinates tend to become psychological carbon copies of their chief.
Carbon copies. Wow.
Yeah. The leader set the tone, the standard, the example, whether it's a teacher with students, a military commander, or a business manager. So the responsibility is on the leader, on you, if you're in that role, to make sure the master copy is worth duplicating.
Be the standard you want to see. Makes sense. Which brings us to the final crucial principle the book highlights for effective thinking and leadership. Something maybe overlooked.
I think it often is. It's the idea that leaders take time out to confer with themselves. Manage solitude.
Managed solitude, not just being alone, but using solitude productively.
Precisely. It isn't being antisocial or selfish. Schwartz argues it's absolutely essential for what he calls superthinking. It's that dedicated, uninterrupted time you need for deep problem solving, for strategic planning, for just letting your mind work without constant interruption. He points to top executives, professors, even historical figures who made this a priority.
And the opposite is?
The opposite is that person who seems terrified of being alone with their own thoughts. The Mr. I can't stand to be alone type he describes, always needing noise, distraction, TV, radio, constant activity.
Filling
the space, exactly.
Okay.
And in doing so, they avoid genuine reflection, deep thinking, and, Schwartz suggests, they ultimately grow shallow. Their thinking doesn't deepen.
So the advice is, don't be afraid of your own thoughts. Embrace solitude.
Use it productively. It's the best environment for undirected thinking, where your subconscious can surface ideas, where you can connect disparate thoughts. It's prime time for self-evaluation. How can I do better? What's the real issue here? And for finding those creative breakthrough solutions. Schwartz basically concludes that the primary job of any leader is thinking, and managed solitude is the best possible preparation for doing that job well.
Okay, so let's quickly trace the path we've taken through this deep dive into Schwartz's magic of thinking big. It really all orbits around that central, powerful idea. The size of your thinking matters far more than, say, the size of your brain or your circumstances.
Absolutely, that's the core.
We explored how to fight back against excusitis, those limiting beliefs about health, education, age, or luck. How to build real confidence by actively selling yourself to yourself.
Or cultivating creative thinking, not as some mystical gift, but as a practical skill, challenging assumptions, asking how.
Right. And the huge importance of consciously choosing your mind food, your environment, the people you associate with to nurture positive growth.
Can't overstate that one. Then the power of clear, compelling goals to give you direction and purpose.
And learning to view setbacks not as failures, but as crucial lessons, opportunities to learn and adjust.
Turning obstacles into stepping stones. Plus, the Be Human rule, the practical effectiveness of genuinely valuing, understanding, and connecting with other people.
Leading by thinking progress, constantly seeking improvement, and setting a standard worth copying.
And finally, harnessing the often neglected power of managed solitude for that deep, essential thinking that drives real progress.
It really is a potent collection of principles, isn't it? All stemming from that fundamental premise. Your mindset, the scale of your belief and perspective, is the ultimate game changer.
It truly is. It shifts the focus from external limitations to internal possibilities.
And considering everything we've talked about, maybe the impact of the mind food you're consuming from your environment, or perhaps the idea of turning your biggest past setback into an asset for your future.
It leaves you with a question, doesn't it? What is just one small, maybe tiny, but deliberate adjustment you could make to your thinking, starting today?
Just one small shift.
That might just crack open the door to a significantly bigger, more fulfilling tomorrow.
Something definitely worth sitting with and exploring. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.